there was this truck driver who was driving the original Route 66 in New Mexico, and he's driving down the highway one night. And as he's driving, he's listening to his favorite radio station. It's a nice, clear night, and he has his window cracked. And he said all of a sudden, as he's driving, he gets a call from another trucker. And the trucker's like, I need your help. This is an emergency. Can you come to me immediately? I'm not too far from you. And so he gives his location to this truck driver. So the truck driver goes off the highway, follows these back roads and follows the instructions, and it takes him to a cemetery. And when the truck driver gets there, he sees there is no truck there. So he gets back on the CB radio and he starts calling to this trucker, and there's no response. So he says on the radio, look, if this is an emergency, I'm here. This is your last chance. I'm leaving. I'm running late on this load. I gotta go. No response. So he, gets back on the highway again. As he's driving down this highway, right, he sees a man on the side of the road. And all of a sudden, this man just darts out in front of him, and he slams on his brakes. He hits this guy. And when he finally stops, he's like, oh man, I just hit this guy. This is crazy. He gets out of his truck and he's like, are you all right? Are you all right? And, he's expecting to find this guy badly hurt or, worse on the ground. But here is this dude standing behind his truck. And he just has this blank look on his face, and he's looking off in the opposite direction. And so the trucker runs up to him. Hey man, are you okay? I didn't mean to hit you. How let me take you to a doctor. And the guy doesn't say anything. And he said, what can I do for you? Where do you want me to take you? And this guy just points in a direction of the highway, and he says, okay, hop in my truck. I'll drive you there. You tell me where to go. So this guy gets in the truck with him. And as this guy, as this trucker is driving, he's got the guy to the right of him. He starts asking him questions, where are you from? Who are you? Guy doesn't say anything, And he says, are you all right? You have to have some kind of injury. Still, the guy wouldn't say anything. So he figures maybe the guy's just really mad that he got hit by the semi. And so he's like, you know what, I'll just be quiet. And when he tells me to stop off somewhere, I'll drop him off. As he's driving, this man, right, that's in the truck, he starts humming. And the trucker kind of looks over at him, because this is the first time he's heard anything out of him. And the guy starts humming a little louder and a little louder, and it's getting louder and louder. And he said as this man was humming, he looked over and he could see his face just start to change. And the color in his eyes started to change. And he said all of a sudden, this man just turns and jumps on him and starts grabbing him. And he's fighting with this guy, trying to get him off. And this guy is just pushing as hard as he can and squeezing his arms. And finally, he slams on the brakes, and this guy goes flying forward and hits, the dash of the truck. The guy gets up, opens the truck door, and just takes off outside the vehicle. So as this guy, the trucker, right, is trying to make sense of what just happened, he, jumps out of the truck, and it was like, hey man, what's going on? And he's trying to chase after this guy. But he said all of a sudden, the guy just disappeared into the desert. And he sees this coyote just run across the desert. And the trucker said he don't know why, that coyote just freaked him out. So he ran and jumped in his truck. He took off and sped out of there. When he gets to a truck stop, he's like, man, I need to get a cup of coffee. So he gets out of his truck and, he goes into this truck stop. But, right as he comes through the front door, there are all these posters of missing people. And one poster in particular sticks out to him because he realizes that's the guy he gave a ride to. And it said he was a truck driver and he went missing on that stretch of highway. You're probably familiar with the term 6-7 because it has become this popular trend amongst the younger generation. But a lot of people don't realize that 6-7 has been often associated with paranormal encounters. Now, there was a woman named Molly. Molly said that her son picked up the trend of saying 6-7, and he would say 6-7 after everything. And eventually it got to the point where she was annoyed. So she tells her son, you can say it at school, you can say it around your friends, but I do not want to hear you say it around me. So she goes home one day and she is sitting in the living room. She started to hear her son saying 6 7, 6 7, 6 7. So she got up, she walked into her son's room, and she said, "What's going on? Like, I told you not to say that number anymore. Like, it's annoying. Please stop." And her son's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I did not say that." She's like, "Okay, whatever. Just don't say it anymore." A couple days later, she is sitting in the living room again, and she sees a shadow go by. And she starts hearing 6 7, 6 7, 6 7, 6 7 over and over again. So she gets up, she goes to her son's room, and she's like, "I told you, stop saying that. Like, it's annoying. Please stop." And once again, her son pleads with her, like, "I did not say that." So it keeps happening over and over again. And this one particular day, she comes home from work, she goes into the kitchen, and on the refrigerator, there are these letter magnets. And she discovers that spelled out on the fridge with these magnets is 67DIE. So she runs into her son's room immediately and she's like, "Okay, this has got to stop. Like, it is getting crazy. Like, you need to stop saying this word and, like, stop messing around because it's not funny." And once again, he says, "Mom, I promise you I am not doing this." So she grounds him. Later that night, she's in bed and she turns over and she looks out at the doorway. She sees her son standing in the doorway and he's just staring at her. And she's like, "Okay, yeah, can I help you?" And he turns around, walks down the hallway. So the next morning, she asks her son, "What did you want? Why did you come to my room?" And he's like, "Mom, like, I didn't do that. Like, that, I don't know what you're talking about." A couple weeks after this, she is in the kitchen. And all of a sudden, her son comes through the kitchen door, stands right by her, and he looks at her. But that's when she realizes, like, her son looks completely different. Like, something is off about him. And that's when he starts to say 6 7, 6 7, 6 7, 6 7, 6 7, 6 7. And his voice got deeper and deeper and sort of darker as he said that. And she starts screaming because she's terrified. She knows this isn't her son. Her son comes running out of his bedroom into the kitchen. She grabs him, embraces him, and is like, "Look, I'm very sorry. I didn't mean to yell at you. And I know that it wasn't you saying that number." So she tells him, like, what had happened. And they both agreed that that number would never be mentioned again in their house. Eastern Texas is a really eerie place. Now, this story comes out of a place near Tyler, Texas. There was this man named Nate, and Nate said this one weekend, him and his buddies decided they were going to go camping. The first night they're out in the woods, they start hearing coyotes, and they could hear this howling sound all around their campsite. And all night long, they kept hearing these howls. Well, the next day, Nate decides he's going to go out into the woods and look for some firewood. So he makes his way out down this trail and he ends up getting lost. And for like 2 hours, he cannot find his way back to the campsite. So he decides, "I'm going to climb this tree and see if I can see the fire from our campsite." So he gets up in the tree and he can see out, a good distance, and he happens to see the smoke coming from where their camp is. So he starts screaming, "Help me, I'm lost, like, help." He said all of a sudden he sees these birds just take off into the sky like they just seen something. And he begins to hear a strange sound coming from the brush on the ground. And he said out behind this bush stepped what looked like a naked man walking on all fours. And he said it was just very animalistic like. And this thing crawls up to the tree that Nate is sitting in. And he said when it got to the tree, it started sniffing it like it had picked up a scent. And all of a sudden, this thing turned its head 360 and it was now looking up at Nate. And it started to say, help me, please help me." And it was repeating what Nate was saying, except it was the sound of a woman's voice. And he said he started screaming again, like, help me, please help me, like screaming for his friends. And he said finally, this thing just took off into the woods and he hears some more noise. And there's his friends coming up to the tree. And he's like, "Look, there's something out in the woods. Like, I was lost. And like, we need to get out of here. We need to get out of here." And his friends are like, "What are you talking about? Like, there's nothing out in the woods. Like, you're losing it, man." And right as he said that, they see a coyote walk by them. And they were like, "Okay, it's time to leave." Why don't people talk more about the Four Corners region? When you think about it, that is probably the most supernatural place in all of the world. On one side in Arizona, you have the Navajo Reservation, where a lot of strange things happen. In New Mexico, you have Dulce. You have the infamous Route 666. In Colorado, you have Mesa Verde. And in Utah, you have places like the Skinwalker Ranch.
In this section of area, there were so many strange and creepy things that happened. Now, there was this trucker. He was driving on the infamous Route 666. He found himself headed north towards Farmington. He said as he was driving, he began to get this weird feeling. He said that the car just felt kind of staticky. He said as he drove down this road, he started to notice something up in the roadway. And as he slowed the truck down, he could see it was a person. It was a young girl, probably 12, 13. She was standing in the middle of the road. So finally the truck comes to a stop, and he gets out. And he starts yelling at this young girl, what are you doing out on the road? You're going to get hit. Like, why are you out here alone? Where's your parents? She doesn't say anything. She's just turned around looking in the opposite direction. He said, I said, like, where are your parents? Like, why aren't you listening? You're not supposed to be in the middle of the road. All of a sudden, she turns around. And when she fully gets to the direction he's looking, he can see she doesn't have a face. He said this girl just started walking backwards and walked all the way into the desert and then just disappeared. He ran, he jumped back in his truck, and he took off. And he sped all the way to Farmington. And he said one of the weird things that also occurred after he'd seen this girl was the radio station kept going in and out, and he would get the static, and he would hear like voices, like people were talking that weren't supposed to be there. There was another story out of Shiprock. There was this man. He believed at the time that his wife might have been cheating on him. So he said, every night she would get up, and he would hear her get up and leave the house and go somewhere. And he didn't know where she was going. So this particular night, he's laying in bed. His eyes are closed. He hears her get up out of the bed. And he hears her go downstairs and go out the door. Well, at the time, he just wanted to wait to make sure she fully left. So he kept his eyes closed and pretended like he was asleep. And finally, once he heard the door shut, he opens his eyes. And when he looks, his wife is sleeping right next to him. But then all of a sudden, he hears the door open again. He hears footsteps coming up the stairs. And he says he sees this creature come through the doorway and crawl into his wife's body. And he didn't say anything. He didn't scream. But the next day, he started to feel very sick. And over the next couple of weeks, he got very, very ill. And eventually, he passed away. And a lot of people attributed that to the fact that he witnessed his wife, right, this creature coming into her body.